choices. Isn't that what's great about our hobby? So many different choices, so many different things to please all kinds of people, right? But what if there was a game you wanted to play and you wanted to play it multiple different ways, different genres, for instance? What if there was a game you liked the mechanics so much that you wish that you could play a fantasy kind of version and a sci-fi kind of version? Well, that's exactly what we're here to talk about today, between Terra Mystica and the Gaia Project, which are both kind of the same game. Gaia Project and Terra Mystica. It even says it on Gaia Project. It says a Terra Mystica game. But before we dive any further, just know that's what we're going to be talking about today. A head-to-head, The Rock, Hollywood Hulk Hogan, circa WrestleMania 18 sort of just collision of two amazing ideas, right? Terra Mystica, the game, the mechanics, two different ways of looking at it. So let's look right now at Terra Mystica and Gaia Project. So if there's one thing in our group that's ubiquitous or synonymous with playing games, and that's this right here. That's right, coffee. No, I'm not recommending that you play coffee. That's not a doctor's recommendation. You know your health, obviously. But the idea of coffee is important to us. Now, not just any coffee, for instance, but certain aspects of the coffee that we have here. So what do I mean by coffee exactly? Well, there's a couple different meanings. First of all, when I'm drinking out of a Keurig, right? I like to go to this instead of just reaching into a box and trying to reach and rabble around. I like to have an organizer, a place for everything to store, a place for everything and everything in its place, right? With different types of coffee, different things. Notice there's some empty spots here, so it's nice to know that I'm running low on a certain type of coffee. But if I'm not in the mood for Keurig and I want something a little bit more craft made, I take something like this. Like this. This is my Chemex coffee. This is a old school drip coffee machine, and by machine I mean it's a beaker with a filter on top. Now what do I mean by this? Well, what I mean by this is beauty, right? Excellence and in craftsmanship, not only in what it does, but in how it looks. And that's exactly what these two games have in common. They're both organized on their player boards in the user interface, and they're also incredibly beautiful looking games. So let's take a look again at the user interface right now and see what I mean by that. So this is what the main player interface looks like of Terra Mystica and Gaia Project. It looks a little something like this here. Each player having a player board that looks very similar in style, but also has some differences, and we'll talk about those right now. This is what they look like now. Here's what they look like set up just like this. So this is the total setup of each player board here. This is Terra Mystica over here, Gaia Project over here. Notice there's a lot of similarities. I'll zoom in a little bit and show you the similarities here, as well as some differences. So obviously wooden pieces over here, but big building, medium building, smaller buildings, the house kind of places, or trading houses, or whatever you call them. Over here, you'll notice that everything is plastic, nice, hard, or soft actually. It's actually more of a soft plastic piece. All these down here, the gaiaformers down here, as well as the same number of pieces though. So boom, 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 boom. So very much an analog of each other. Now up here you'll notice that there's a money track, an ore track, and a research track, I think, or whatever it's called. I think it's called research or technology or something like that. I think it's research. Anyway, these are done by a track, a la kind of Pillars of the Earth, rather than having to have individual coins or whatever these resources would be. You actually just keep track of them on a track. And I've actually gotten to where I really like this system. Fields of Arl did it a lot, and I actually like it better than having just a chunk of stuff over my player area, because it gets cluttered sometimes, especially when you're trying to grab those worker cubes from Terra Mystica that are incredibly annoying to grab. Notice there's nothing like that over here on Terra Mystica. So this is your basic interface. Notice the bowls over here and the power area over here. You've got this new Gaia area here. Here's what I was talking about with the coffee analogy though. Everything is organized, has a place. When you lift something up, it gives you information, but it's also quite beautiful because it plays very well into how the game plays. For instance, when you remove one of these, or over here in Terra Mystica's case, one of these, you see what's under it. And what's under it tells you what your income is during the income phase. During the income phase, anything with this symbol and an item in it is something you get. So you would increase your white resource here, and you would get workers over here in Terra Mystica. That's what that means. Same thing here. If you would pull this off, you would be able to cycle 4 power, plus this one has a mechanic the other one doesn't have, of getting an additional power into your pool up here. These are the same way. You would get 2 blue, and you would get this new cube. It's a QIC action over here. It's a special action that gives you one of these green cubes, which can be spent for different things, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So this is the player interface, what you are directly sat in front of you. Now, let's talk the differences first, starting with Terra Mystica over here. So Terra Mystica has this thing called terraforming here, and it's a wheel of terraforming. So we'll look at that when we get to the actual board, what that means. But your home type of terrain is what's up top, and it costs you shovels to transform a piece of earth into your home terrain. The further away it is on this wheel, the more it costs you. It costs you 1 worker. I'm sorry, no, that's wrong. It costs you 3 workers originally, because you would normally put a token here to tell you where your terraforming level is. 3 workers to terraform 1 shovel. So if you were going from this terrain or this terrain, it would cost you 3 of your white cubes. And then you would place one of the tiles out, and we'll show you that in a minute, onto the board. The further you are away, the more expensive it is. Over here, there's something similar. You have 1 step of Gaia forming here, 2 steps here, 3 steps here of these planets. Now, you do not do shovels, and you don't have actual tiles to put out on the board in Gaia Project, but you just have to note which terrain or which type of planets you can do. Now, there's also a range difference in this game versus this game, because over here they have to be directly adjacent. Here there's a slight range difference, and you can increase that range based on the track. We'll show you in a minute. Now, that's how you change the planets right there. One difference here in Gaia Project, you have to do, if you're going to do the action, which they're all listed on your little player aid, if you're going to do the action where you Gaia form or change a planet into your type of planet and place one of these space station type things, you have to do it all in one action. You can't do like in Terra Mystica, in which you could partially terraform because you have the tokens out there. You could actually partially terraform this and wait to build this later if you wanted to. You cannot do that anymore. So that is the general player actions here. There's no more shipping in Terra Mystica, in Gaia Project. It's only shipping here. This has to do with how far your network is when it comes to being able to build on further tiles. And again, we'll talk about that in a minute. Power, you would cycle these. You have to wait till everything's in bowl 2 before you can start moving into bowl 3. And once it's in bowl 3, you can spend it for various different actions. Same goes for over here. The only difference is there are ways to get multiple power tokens in this game versus just the 12 you start with in the other game. Same rule applies though. If you want to kick one out of here to move one over, you can do that as many times as you want up to the amount that you have. And that's it. Notice these are both the blue players. So that's how everything looks here. Now let's take a look at the boards for these games right now. So we talked terrain tiles. This is what the board looks like here. There's special actions down at the bottom. There's a victory point track across the top. You would actually all start with, I believe I want to say it's 20 victory points here. You start with 20 because you can spend some. You would all pick a place based on your home tiles. The blue goes on these swampy tiles. You then will do actions. Now on the board here, there's also bonus tiles for each round that you will take. You'll get victory points for each round. You'll set that up, and each round you'll get points based on if you do a certain amount of things. In-game condition is up here. If you have the expansion, this changes. Otherwise, it has to do with the largest connected area, and we'll talk about what that means in just a little bit. But the main board here has to do with all these spaces. Notice all the different colored spaces, like we said. So if you wanted to terraform this space into your own, you would spend the 3 workers, and then you would put one of these tokens out here covering it up. Now in Gaia Project, you would immediately have to put one of these out there, but you don't have to do that in Terra Mystica. You can wait, or you can put this out there. Then also the other action of upgrading means you pay the cost to upgrade. You would take one of your other pieces, this would be your trade house or whatever, put it out there on the board. You can then upgrade that one into this one, or that one again into this one, or you can go straight from the trade house into your big bad here. These all cost different things. They do different powers. These unlock a special power for you each time. The other ones unlock a favor token, which do things for you to get you up the favor track, which we'll talk about in a minute. These special actions down here can only be performed once per round. You would cover it up with one of those little action token markers. The cost in power out of bowl 3 is down here. So this would be laying a bridge. Now laying a bridge will let you cross this and count it as directly adjacent for when it comes to the end game. As well as certain other things that have to do with direct adjacency. This gives you a priest. This gives you 2 workers, 7 coins. Terraform once, terraform twice. That's the main board. That's all the features and facets of the main board here. Now, one thing is shipping I was talking about. If you wanted to build here, you would have to have your shipping to be able to cross 1 square of river. So if you wanted to terraform here, you'd have to have your shipping up, and that's all that really means right there. Let's take a look at the Gaia Project board and how it's a little bit different. One thing of note, this is the priest track. I forgot to mention this just a minute ago, but basically it's a majorities track. You can use your priest at the bottom of those spaces at the bottom of each one that will boost your token that you'll have on there up that many spaces. If you put a priest on the red 3, you'll move up the red track 3 spaces. Each one of those cycle power tokens that you pass, you will cycle that many power. If you have a city, which we'll talk about what that means in a minute for both games because it applies to both, you can go up to level 10, which is the highest, and it obviously means you're going to be the winner of that one. But otherwise, you're the highest. The highest person gets a certain amount of points at the end of the game, and that's what that's all about. So this is the board of Gaia Project. Notice it looks slightly different than the board of Terra Mystica. It's space and it's modular. You can change this around. I just threw together some planets right here. So your home planets look a little bit different, obviously, than the Terra Mystica board. Notice they're a little bit further away, but that's that range I was telling you about. The range is a little bit further in this game where they don't have to start completely adjacent. I think that you have a range of 1, 2 to start with, and that, if that's wrong, well, then you can correct me later. But anyway, these green planets are Gaia planets, and the purple planets are transdim planets. Basically, you can turn these planets into Gaia planets. Gaia planets can then be colonized. A couple different colonization rules. They have to be accessible, hospitable, and you have to pay for the resources, whatever, to do it. So if you wanted to change this planet from the red to the white, whatever your type of alien is, or whatever your race is, you would just check the amount, pay the amount, and then go ahead and put one of your blue pieces down there to mark that that's now your planet. Now, if you had notice there's a gap here. Let's say you had terraformed or gaiaformed this planet. Well, then this gap would not count when it comes to having a city. You would have to spend, and you'll see these little cubes, to get a satellite here. And once you put a satellite out, then you can, when you put a satellite out, you'll connect these to where they're directly adjacent. That goes to the whole 4 building 7 power sort of thing. So you'll notice on this board, it's a little bit different. This is the Gaia Project version. Your special powers are still down here. The points track is around this instead. This takes the place of the priest track from the other game, but these empty spaces are places for these technology tiles. And technology tiles are the analog to the favor tiles from Terra Mystica. They do things like move up 1 space on the blue track, and then for every trade house you place, you gain 3 victory points. Or that you place, gain 3 victory points. These technology tiles do very similar things. Gain a worker and gain a QIC cube, which, like I said, can be spent for various things. This one means that your higher buildings are worth 4 power instead of 3. That again goes to building cities and for the special sharing action that you get if someone builds a city right next to you. These are the different technology areas that you can research, and the difference in this game versus the priest tiles, whereas the priest tiles really didn't do anything, this track really does. So the higher you move up on this, you get more blue cubes, blue income each round. Well, the thing about blue is how you spin. You spin blue to move up on this track. So 4 blue is how you move up each individual one of these tracks. You kind of have to focus which way you want to focus your game. This one is that amount for your terraform. So currently it's 3 workers or 3 white cubes, 3 white resources to change a planet 1 step. Remember, you have that on your player board. Each step is one of these symbols. The next one really doesn't do anything. It just gives you 2 workers. And then when you go here, it now becomes 2 white resources instead of 3 for each of those symbols. And the higher up you go, the better that gets as well. This one's your range, so you can reach further and further into space when it comes to, and you start here, you start on 1. So if you wanted to make it where you could reach 2 away to build or to change planets in Gaia form, you would be here. This one has to do with your actual just getting QICs. The higher you up you go on this, the more QIC cubes you get. Those are important when it comes to Gaia forming planets. We'll talk about that in a minute. This one, currently, you cannot change a transdim planet to a Gaia planet until you move up 1 level. Then you would put your Gaia former out there on the planet, and this is an action. You would spend 6 power. That means spend it out of bowl number 3. Place it on one of these purple planets over here, and then it will become a green planet with your transdim thing on there eventually at the end of that turn, because it happens in the next phase. Anyway, the higher up you go, the better that action gets. This one, just other resources. So the higher you go on this, the more things you get. Currently, this, then that, and these don't stack. You don't get this and this and this. You would get this, and when you move up, you get that, and vice versa. These are also special actions you can spend QIC cubes for. This means you can spend 4 QIC cubes to get a technology. This one means you can spend 3 to count one of your Federation. That's the word, Federation tokens again. So they'll do different bonuses and things that are worth points. And then last but not least over here is you get 3 points for 2 QIC cubes, and then you get to get an extra point for each type of planet you have in your just that you have a building on. So each of the different colored planets. Now, at the beginning of the turn in both games, you'll pick a tile that looks like this, a little bit differently in Terra Mystica, of course, but there are things like when you place these two types of structures this game, if you place, or at the end of the round, you'll get 4 points for each of these you have placed. Also, during the income phase cycle, 4 power, and it's all things like that. Like when you do this, you get this. This one's a special action to increase your range by 3 for that turn. You know, they're all different things that change potentially what you can do for that turn. And that's basically it. Let's walk through the actions of each game just so we can compare, and then we'll go from there. Okay, here are the 2 reference cards that teach you all the different actions in the game. We'll go through Terra Mystica first. So first is the terraform and build here. Notice they're on both sides, which means you can do the terraform and build, or you could just terraform, or you could just build if there was one there already. This one is to upgrade your shipping number. Again, we talked about what shipping does. This one's to upgrade your terraforming rating, so go from much like this in this game. This allows you to move up that track, which costs you different amounts to terraform. This one is the upgrade, so you can upgrade this into that, into that, into that, and that, or this into this, and then from there to there. It's once per action there. Put a priest on the track as another action. Use one of the power actions at the bottom. Use one of the power actions you've been granted by playing your big fortress tile piece, you know, the big wooden cube. This one would be a special action on one of the beginning of turn tiles that you take that I just showed you, and this would be a special action on your favorite tiles. And last but not least is when you pass, you will switch in this tile that you picked, grab one of the other ones out there, and then the first one to pass becomes the first player. Really similar here. Again, though, the difference is you cannot terraform and build. It's just, I'm sorry, you can't terraform or build. It's terraform and build, one action, but they don't call it terraforming. This one is start a Gaia project. That's what I talked about this track here. You would have to be at least here. You would spend 6 power and put one of your Gaia formers out there, which you get a Gaia former here, by the way. Each of these is where you get your Gaia former, so you only get 3 at a time, potentially. But you would put a Gaia form out on a transdim planet. The next turn, it'll turn into a Gaia planet, at which point it becomes habitable, hospitable, habitable. This is the upgrade action, same as the other game. This action is to cause or create a federation. So it just happens in Terra Mystica, but in this game, when you get buildings, and you'll notice at the bottom, I'll show you because it's the same in both games, there's a certain amount of power associated with each type of building. It's the same in both games. There's 4 power here, 2, 1, okay. This one's a special, sorry. Let's go with this one. It's 3, then 2, then 1. This building, these 2 buildings are worth 3 power. These 2 buildings are worth 2 power, and these buildings are worth 1 power. It's the same for both games, both of the classes. If you have 4 buildings worth 7 power in Terra Mystica, it just becomes a kind of a city. Whereas in this one, it's an action to form a federation. So once you have, you know, a set of buildings worth 4 buildings worth 7 power, and again, if they're not connected, you would have to pay a power to put a satellite cube down in between them in these blank space areas right here. But then you would form a federation and get one of those federation tokens, which again do different things. This would be to go up the research track by spending 4 blue resources. This would be the special power actions and the special QIC actions. This would be any other special actions that you have based on tiles or sort of things like that. And the last one is pass. You become the first player just like in the other game. So that is how you play Gaia Project and Terra Mystica. There's probably a few more things to it than what I just said, but that's an overview of how to play both games right there. So now let's talk about what we came to this review to talk about. Which one is a better game? So at the end of the day, where you come down is really going to be up to you. Are you feeling more like, there's nothing in there, I just wanted to do that. Are you feeling more like a sci-fi person? Are you feeling more like a fantasy person? Well, the question is, do you like Terra Mystica first, the concept? Because that's really what this is going to come down to, whether you should buy Gaia Project or Terra Mystica or not. Do you like, it's hard to say that, but this really has more to do with Gaia Project here. Do you like Terra Mystica? If you like Terra Mystica, buy the Gaia Project. If what I've told you about Terra Mystica whets your interest in Terra Mystica, but you're not really interested in the fantasy stuff or the little bitty bits, and Gaia Project looks smoother and sleeker to you, then by all means buy a Gaia Project. But this is where it comes down to, which one did I enjoy better? That's tough. It really is, and I have to break it down a couple different ways. And I know I do this every time, where I kind of equivocate and I kind of waffle back and forth between the games that I'm doing this versus series of. But which one do I enjoy more? Well, let me tell you what I do enjoy more overall is I love in Terra Mystica taking those round tokens and putting them on the board. I like that better I know it's more streamlining in Gaia Project to do it without doing that, where you just put it on the board. I get it. And I know there's the little green Gaia planets to cover up the transdim planets, but there's something about the board literally terraforming in front of you and starting to look more and more like your planet or your terrain that to me is a win, right? I like Terra Mystica better for that. Which one's easier to put on the table? Well, I have a insert for Terra Mystica, but that's irrelevant. I think that Gaia Project's actually easier just because of the way the boards come together and there's less clutter with the fact that your resources are all on a track. I like that very much. The pieces in Gaia Project are fantastic. Those plastic miniatures are so nice. They're soft rubber, but it's really, really nice. So I think the win for aesthetics goes to Gaia Project. It looks better. It's a prettier game with every little detail being done. Now, you know, both of these games have great iconography. Every little thing is spelled out for you. Now, it takes a little bit to get used to that iconography, but once you do, you can understand and get it pretty easily and pretty simply how the game is laid out and how you play it. So that is a win for both of the games right there as far as layout. But the prettier of the two is Gaia Project all day. Which one is easier to teach? Terra Mystica and Gaia Project both have several different learning curve things in them, but I feel like Gaia Project is actually easier to teach if you can get people to understand the namesake of the game, Gaia Project. That whole idea of putting the Gaia Project out there on a purple planet, but can you put them on a green planet by themselves? The whole idea of the Gaia Project is a little bit tricky of an action, but once you get that down, I feel like Gaia Project is actually an easier game to teach than Terra Mystica because of the shipping and the direct adjacency. Those two concepts still throw us for a loop all the time, and we've played them a ton of times, but the idea of shipping and direct adjacency still messes with our minds. So, at the end of the day, do you like fantasy? Get Terra Mystica. Do you like sci-fi? Get Gaia Project. Which one is a better game? I'm going to do it. I'm going to make the call. I'll do it like this. I like Gaia Project better. Carla likes Terra Mystica better. It's pretty simple. I know that's totally quaffling, but if you've listened to our top 5 games of last year and you've heard me talk about Carla's style and you know how I view games, I like Gaia Project better because of all the pretty upgrades. I like that track way better. I like the research track. That is fantastic, where your game gets determined by what you choose to research versus just this one's just a blue point or a red point or whatever, you know. So I think Gaia Project for me is the better game of the two. Carla would say Terra Mystica. While both of them have their strengths and both of them have their weaknesses, Gaia Project for me gets easily a 7.5, 8. It's just a really, really good game. I like it. I like the style. I like what it's based on. I like Terra Mystica. I like what came before. So that's Gaia Project versus Terra Mystica. And for me, Terra Mystica comes out holding the belt, but at the end of the day, much like WrestleMania 18, Hulk Hogan and The Rock are both in the ring doing the poses because they're both winners in this game of board game life. What you gonna do, brother? Anyway, that's it for this time on the latest retro. I'm Brian Drake with the Dice Tower here. Make sure to check out the rest of our videos. Until then, we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.